Hi everyone, Kevin Flowers, staff reporter here at the Erie Times News, and I have two guests here with us today for this Facebook Live discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about Erie CPR and the McBride Viaduct issue. A lot of people know that the demolition of the viaduct, which is going to be a slow process, has started today, but our guests want to talk a little bit about their group and their views on this whole situation. I have Adam Trott, who's the president of Erie CPR here, and John Henderson, who's the vice president. So thank you both for being here. And Adam, John, why don't you tell people who don't know a lot about Erie CPR, what Erie CPR is about and how you got involved in this issue.
Well, to be concise, it's a grassroots organization of Erie residents that got very concerned about how the Eastside was being just simply dismissed. And there are core issues that can be addressed and solved on the east side, but there doesn't seem to be any will at City Hall to do that. So we started to meet and discuss about what would be good for the east side. The main issue on the east side for us is the viaduct. And it's kind of the tipping point. Either you're going to kill the east side or you're going to save the viaduct and resurrect the east side and empower the east side to recover under its own power. You know, that's the idea about saving the viaduct. So we've been getting together for years now. We started at Shiloh Baptist, and Anthony Harris, the pastor there, was our first president. He was with us for a while, and he got pulled off for other things. So now we've coalesced to a group of any given meeting we have is between 12 and 20 people. And we all have different skills we bring to the table. Right now, we are completely, pretty much focused on saving the viaduct, but there are a lot of other issues we're doing on the east side besides the viaduct.
Okay, and when you mentioned the east side and the viaduct being a central issue for you, is that strictly access or is there other components of it?
It's a multifaceted issue here. First and foremost, what drew me into it was from a professional viewpoint. That to me, removing that critical piece of how the east side connects over across the tracks was just the most insane idea ever to remove it. So I thought, well, we need to look at the facts and really look at this in an unbiased, fact-based analysis of that bridge. However, beyond that, as we've been on this 5+ year journey, we've been discovering a lot of systemic problems on how City Hall does things, particularly when they involve the east side. And that got very concerning for me, because I know so many people at City Hall, they're all good people, they're trying to do a good job, but we were finding things that were very disappointing and disheartening on how they approach things. And we thought if we could prove our case with the facts, it's a no-brainer. You save the bridge. But we found that it wasn't just ignorance that we were fighting at City Hall. It's a willful and deliberate disinterest in anything having to do with that area. And that's a much bigger obstacle to overcome than just trying to have a fact-based analysis. And that whole attitude at City Hall manifested itself in their obstruction of the public hearing. There was no way in the world they were ever going to allow a public hearing. To us, that's the critical piece, because they've said so many false things about the viaduct. A public hearing, you're under oath. You're on record. You cannot say falsehoods and then just walk away and hope no one finds out, right? You have to be factual. So that's why we've been fighting for this public hearing so fervently, is because that's the way that you start to change how City Hall does things for the east side.
Okay. Do you want to add anything to that?
Well, there's not much that I could add. Adam is genius at this, and he's put it very, very well.
Got a question. How do you guys feel about the demolition starting? Or how does that affect what you're doing right now?
John?
Well, I hate it, of course, but We've been fighting this for a long time, and we've just about exhausted all of our efforts, and so the bridge is going to probably go down. We're gonna hold up some hope that it won't, but the way it seems that that battle is just about over. I hate that it's coming down. I'm not happy with the way that the decisions were made to help in or aid in bringing it down. I wish that we had gotten to have at least a hearing, at most court date in the federal courts here. We should have had a trial. Somebody should have been heard. The city should have had to have been made to back up some of the statements they've been making about why the bridge has to come down.
Yeah, and for me it's sadness. We've been trying to prevent this harm to the people who the bridge is a critical part of their daily life, how they get back and forth. And it's exemplified by the day that they blocked it off to pedestrians. We had a couple Erie CPR members there to record that this was happening. And two little kids, I don't know what age they were, but they come up and they just stopped. And they turned around, and one of our members asked, "Where are you going?" And they said, "Well, we were going to go home, but we can't do that anymore." And our member said, "Well, why don't you just use the Bayfront Bridge?" And they said, "Oh no, our mom said we could never go on the highway." So they had to go back to where they came from and figure out, how on earth are we getting home? That kind of stuff happens a lot, and it matters.
The information that you guys have, how many people do you estimate use that bridge for pedestrian use daily?
When we counted in the summer of 2015, we were counting over 200 trips a day.
Okay. All right. And because one of the things that has come back to me a lot, and I'm sure you've heard it too, and I've interviewed you about this, is that people mention to me, well, why didn't this start sooner in terms of your efforts? And not saying everybody has a clock on it, but we know, and you and I have talked about this before, 2014, the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, had a meeting, said to some of your members, come up with a plan, raise some money. I'm paraphrasing, but the city, that if you did that, the city would be willing to talk about your public park walkway idea. Can you explain to people, because it comes at me a lot, of why that didn't happen?
Yeah, we actually looked at that. From that day at the MPO meeting, we had looked at that. We said, oh, that's a way that they're willing to save the bridge. Great. So we started to dig into it. Meanwhile, when we're doing that, City Hall is issuing all kinds of false statements about the viaduct. And so we were kind of two-pronged at that point. On the one prong, we were looking at what it would take to be a 501c3 as they requested. On the other hand, we were having to research and debunk all the crazy stuff they were saying that was wrong about the bridge. So we're kind of splitting our time between those two fronts. Now, regarding the ownership of the bridge, there were several things we ran into that were deal breakers. One is that we didn't have a huge asset-based patron to provide the asset collateral to actually take the bridge. A bunch of residents can't just show up with nothing in hand and say, yeah, we're going to own this bridge. There's no one that will insure you.
So
There's no one
no
that
big
will
benefactor to kind of...
Right,
okay.
Right. So that was one problem. The next problem was it turned out that to do that, instead of just having the city continue to own it and insure it, and then a P3 partnership, which is being done all over the country now, and having a P3 partnership to just simply manage the maintenance, much like what Leaf does at Frontier Park, that was the same thing, because a private entity actually owning the bridge means they have to get their own insurance, they have to get their own liability, their own bonding capacity, all these things that the city already has.
Right.
And so they don't have to pay for that. They already have it. And the bridge is already covered in their municipal insurance. So it costs them literally nothing to maintain ownership. I think the big issue that we're finding is they lack faith that a group like LEAF could be initiated into maintaining the viaduct. But we are a team of professionals. We know what we're doing. We can do this. But there's a faith issue.
Well, and many of the partnerships, for lack of a better term, that have led to the Savior Bridges, Chattanooga comes to mind, for example, or the bridge that's the viaduct that's being redone in the Philadelphia area. That's how those were started. An entity formed, whether it was a 501c3 nonprofit, worked with government, raised some money, and you guys have used those as examples. So it just seems curious at some points that, are you saying it couldn't have happened the same way here?
Correct, because in those circumstances there are some scalable issues that are vastly different than what we have here. In the case of the High Line and the Philadelphia, it used to be called the Reading Viaduct, now it's called Friends of the Rail Park.
Right.
What you have there is you have a delineation of an elevated pedestrian walkway that is touching on all kinds of real estate. Mm-hmm. So the potential investor base for that project is at a much bigger scale than what we have here.
Because there's space for development around there.
Yeah, the west end of New York City, where the High Line went, is a perfect example. That was if you could ever say an area of New York City is depressed, the west side was where a lot of public housing was, a lot of the lower income developments were. When the High Line came in, all of a sudden you've got people investing hundreds of millions into property that never saw that kind of enrichment. Mm-hmm. So there's an investor difference that was more immediate on the rail park and the High Line that we don't have here. The thing that makes the viaduct a charming, unique story is that essentially you're taking an existing asset, much like the High Line and the Reading Viaduct did, and it's much smaller though. I mean, the High Line's like over a mile.
Correct.
And I don't remember what the length of the Reading Viaduct was, but we have a much shorter piece, and the investment value of that piece is not that it will enrich a ton of real estate under it. It will improve the values of the manufacturing that's adjacent to it, because it's an amenity now where the workers can go for lunch, they can exercise, whatever. But what it is, the value of that is more of a socioeconomic and environmental justice value, where you have people that they don't have a choice. People walk on the High Line by choice. The people that use the viaduct, they're not choosing to use it, they have to use it, because the only other alternative is a 2,000-foot walk next to an arterial highway. That's horrible. So what you've got is you've got an asset that can make a completely new gesture to the Eastside that, hey, we're City Hall, we're starting to understand now what you are. And this viaduct is a critical piece in how you exist. So we're going to save it. Our plan does not spend any more than they're paying to demolish it. Once the city says, yes, we'll keep it, all kinds of grants open up to us where we can finish the cost to restoring it. And then we have a brand new asset that tells everybody that that area of town has City Hall's attention. Now those buildings that everybody loves to mock on either side, that there are some good buildings, mm-hmm. but there are a lot that are hurting for maintenance. Now all of a sudden, a whole new picture about reinvesting in those buildings. This is the kind of catalyst that we can do. Now that is similar to the High Line and what will become the rail park, but it's a different angle of it than what they have. And it's just an incredible opportunity that's being missed.
We have a question.
Go ahead.
And you might be able to talk to this, Adam, but we had one commenter who said, like, where are you getting this feedback? Where are the kids? Where are these concerned folks? Are you meeting with them? I mean, that's been kind of one criticism we've seen. We see you guys, fighting for these people. Have you talked to them individually?
Yeah, if you go to our website, www.erieviaduct.com, you can see scores of videos on the bridge where we're asking them, where are you coming from, where are you going, why are you taking the bridge? Some people don't know how to express themselves. So I know a couple of those videos have been charged with, oh, you're leading them on. No, we're trying to help them get out what they're trying to say. But really, to get to the question, we've had get-togethers, we've had community meetings at the Boys and Girls Club, at the Booker T. Washington Center, at Shiloh Baptist, to discuss this issue embedded in the area where the residents are. And they've told us what they're thinking about, but frankly, they don't have the resources to invest in this cause. That's why those of us that are professionals, that part of our vocation is to do things to better the Erie community, we're the ones putting the time in to try and get this turned around.
Adam, real quick, if you or John, if you can talk about just the idea towards trying to fight this through a federal civil rights lawsuit, because if people don't understand why you took that approach, explain why you did that.
Yeah, basically, John, did you want to comment first?
Well, I'm trying to look into the fact that we had offers to the city just to have a city hearing, just a hearing. All of those were just pushed to the side. Got no feedback, no cooperation from the city at all. Our options, were to file a lawsuit, I'd imagine, right, Adam? And we filed a lawsuit through the federal system, and you had problems there too, haven't you?
Well, yeah, when it was down in Pittsburgh, we were very happy because we wanted to be out of this environment, and the judge in Pittsburgh would have a completely unbiased, unfettered view of the case. When it got transferred up to here, we got concerned because of the environment up here, and our concerns were validated because essentially, if you, and we're not holding anything against the federal judge. Some people have tried to charge that, but we don't hold anything against the judge. What you need to understand is when you read the decision, one of the problems with the judge's decision is she states the defendant's case, she states the plaintiff's case, and then she completely misses our challenges to the defendant's positions. And that's at the core of our case, is that the defendants have had this misinformation campaign for years, and we're trying to get them under oath to try and say the same false things that they've said for 5 years. And what she did is she said, well, he said, she said, I'm dismissing. And that removes the remedy that these systems are intentionally constructed to provide. And that is that when something is done wrong by a government agency, there is an examination and an outing of the facts. That's not happening here. And we think we would have gotten that in Pittsburgh. We didn't get it here in Erie, and now we're going to go to Philadelphia to see if we can get it there.
Do you believe that will not be an issue in front of the Third Circuit then? Is that what you're saying?
We believe that the Third Circuit will look at what we filed in our legal materials and say, geez, there's a lot of challenging of the defendant's position. We won't give them carte blanche validity. We're going to give the plaintiffs a chance to present their challenges to these positions. That's what we were denied with the local judge.
Okay, one other thing I wanted to kind of get on record in this conversation. As you move forward with the Third Circuit appeal, because this is something that's been asking me, will you pursue a waiver of a bond again in that case, or is that not on the table this time?
The bond issue is typically there's a couple reasons why it exists. One is to protect the government agency from frivolous delays and costs. That's not the case here. We have substantive reasons. We're trying to stop a massive mistake. The other issue is that they want to try and hold the plaintiff party accountable for delays and costs that the defendants otherwise don't want to be responsible for. But what's different in this case is that we're not a plaintiff party that's doing this for fun or doing it for personal benefit or enrichment. We're defending the parts the residents of Erie that don't have the resources to challenge. So we're stepping in for them, and we're putting this challenge forward. And any delays in costs, they're because the city screwed up the process to begin with. They didn't have the public hearing, and they put out all this false narrative. So we're not liable for that. And I know a lot of people have said, oh, you're costing us money. You have to understand that is a divisive tactic that the city is using to pit the city's non-viaduct residents against the viaduct residents. They're trying to say the viaduct residents are going to cost you money. No, that's not the case. Your own screwing up of the process is costing the money. We're trying to remedy it. And if we can be successful here, now all of a sudden the Eastside is empowered to understand that, hey, there's hope. And that can change everything.
Okay, because I didn't know if within an appeal, if you would still make that kind of request to the Third Circuit, but...
Yes, we would. They would want it. We would say we don't want it. It'd be up to the Third Circuit to decide that.
Okay.
That's correct.
We also have another question. Talking about City Hall, and this is something that's crossed my mind. What has your interaction been like with City Hall? Like John said, you guys have asked for a public meeting, but especially since Joe Schember took office as mayor, what has that looked like for you guys?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misconception about all that because basically I have a lot of advocacies in Erie beyond the viaduct. And there's a lot of things City Hall does that I'm a champion. I cheerlead that. I'm like, yeah, that's a good move.
Well, we've talked about Erie Refocus, for example, and some of the components of that, and you know, I've interviewed you for stories for that, and I know that's probably one of the examples you'd say.
Yes, that's one of them. So what we have is we have an amicable relationship with all of City Hall. And what we're doing is the viaduct issue is where we butt heads. And we're not going to accept that they can do this extreme harm to this part of town and then pretend that they didn't do it on other parts of town. So they want to do these things in the other parts of town, and I condone and cheerlead a lot of that. But what we have to do is we can't disregard what you're doing to these folks on the east side. You have to be accountable for that. So our relationship is happy, it's workable. On all the other fronts I'm working on, we're all cooperative and we want to reach the same thing, a better Erie. However, there is a problem with the way City Hall works, and that is it's kind of a parochial atmosphere where if you're against them on one thing, it's that, well, if you don't like me on this, then you don't like me on anything. That maturity has to change at City Hall. They have to isolate issue by issue and understand, yeah, I don't agree with you here, but we're friends on this one, great, we work. So that would be another thing that would be a great consequence of this, is to understand, yeah, we can butt heads, we can fight, we can get through it, and we're still making Erie a better place together. John?
Well, my concern is that I'm concerned about just who's calling the shots. I can't see why all this effort is being put into taking down this viaduct right now with the dilapidated buildings that stand over it. To me, I feel like the bridge is supporting those buildings from falling. But dealing with City Hall, and I live in this area, I live in that community. I'm seeing things that are taking place. I'm trying to build up my property value. Somebody runs in my backyard and puts up a garbage recycling place that I've got to deal with a terrible smell for all during the summer and pretty much all year. There's something about this city that totally disrespects the neighborhoods that I live in. Totally disrespects. This bridge, to me, is just a symbol. You know, they have something that they don't like, they will tear it down. And basically, I feel that's the same thing they're doing to the people in my community. They just don't like us over there and they're tearing us down. They're separating us from everything else. I'm understanding that the bridge is coming down. I'm understanding that a wall is going to be built around the west side or west end of the Bayfront to further block off our neighbors. There's no exits on, there's no exits off. we've got everything just seem to be materializing to make our property values go down, yet our taxes don't go down. We're being taxed without representation. I mean, we've got next to the recycling plant there, we've got wrecking companies, we've got automobile wrecking companies, we've got the scrap yard under the bridge, we've got Austin, and I don't want to use names, but we got cement companies that are building around us. I mean, like, what kind of value can we set to our properties if the city's going to keep working to bring things in or allow things in to keep our value down? I'm pretty sure the guy that owns the garbage disposal place lives nowhere near his business. I'm pretty sure that if somebody tried to put that business in his area, there would be, excuse my French, hell to pay.
Yeah, there are ways to allow certain conflicting uses to coexist, but it seems like City Hall doesn't really care about requiring those when it's on that side of town. I think that's the basic message.
We have another question from
Sure.
a viewer. How were the air pollution and safety impacts to pedestrians on the Bayfront connector evaluated during the feasibility process?
Well, that essentially was dodged, and it was dodged in a very insidious way. The demolition team, when they forwarded their National Environmental Policy Act materials to the Federal Highway Administration, there is a deal breaker in that filing. And what happened was the demolition team asked for a categorical exclusion, which wipes a ton of the investigation off if you can get one. And what they did is the deal breaker they presented to the Federal Highway Administration was that they said there is absolutely no controversy with this project. See, the minute anything is controversial about a project, then you have to do your due diligence. They dodged all that by falsely presenting the project as this is not controversial. And they did that after they had the CAC meetings where the majority of the room said, we want to save our bridge at all costs. Tell us how to save this bridge. And they just dismissed it. And then they went and said, no, there's no controversy. So we actually have a legal team working on that.
That was going to be my question.
That is pursued.
Can you open that door as part of your third circuit appeal, or do you plan to?
We have, yes, it's in process right now. We have a legal team that's specifically geared towards environmental type of issues and fairness. And they're subsidized by the Heinz Foundation down in Pittsburgh. So they don't just take any case. They reviewed ours and they said, boy, there's some real substantive issues. We'll take your case. So they're working for us on this issue, and it's pennies on the dollar.
Are you talking about separate litigation, or as part of this Third Circuit appeal? Or?
It is separate. It's on a separate track from the civil rights complaint. There are two separate tracks, yes.
Okay. So Adam, John, where do you go if the Third Circuit doesn't go the way you want it to go? Are you done with the viaduct and moving on to other social justice issues in that area, or can you talk about that?
Essentially, Erie CPR was founded for a much broader response to the needs of the East Side. So what we're looking at is worst case scenario. If we're not successful with the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, then what we have to do is direct all efforts to heal the community as best we can from this incredible harm that they're about to do, that they are doing now. It's in effect now. And, you know, ultimately, if the East Side starts to recover, we would like to reestablish that connection. Now, it wouldn't be anywhere near as muscular or sturdy as the viaduct is. That thing's built like a tank. That thing is not a crumbling bridge, I can tell you. It's like telling somebody who has dandruff, oh, your head's crumbling. No, it's superficial. It's in the top part of your skin. That's all that's happening with the viaduct. The structure is sound. PennDOT's estimate validates that. Grago's letter, that's been a lot of misrepresentation, that validates that it's repairable, folks.
If that bridge was as damaged as they say it is, I would never drive a big truck on top and just sit there in it, you know. And they've got the heavy machinery there to tear it down. you know, it's like I would come in from the bottom. I wouldn't endeavor to go on top of that bridge. So, you know, all this is just falsehood. You know, it's
yeah, and back to Kevin's question, so where do we go from here? We are master planning different objectives for the east side. And Brenneman and Brennan's East Side Opportunity Corridor, that's part and parcel with the overall master planning of the east side. We can't wait for City Hall. City Hall doesn't care about the east side. They want to develop downtown, and they only have so much capacity, so they're focused on that. And unfortunately, the road show about the comprehensive plan, all it did to the east side was lecture them on how important the downtown was. They didn't listen to anything. Those poor residents showed up at those meetings to voice what they need, and City Hall didn't care. They just talked about downtown. So we're going to take the place of that, and we're going to engage the residents. It would be a much greater fruitful engagement if we could say the viaduct, because that will bring the people out. They'll say, oh my gosh, something happened for us. Hey, this is real. We can actually do something on the east side.
When do you think that whole engagement process is starting?
Well, it is already going on to a
Well, I mean, in
certain
kind of that
degree.
manner that you talked about.
Yeah, when we get past the viaduct, then we'll have more capacity to give more resources to that. But there are people, not just in Erie CPR,
Sure.
that plug in once we get that full going.
You talking about other groups, other...
Yeah, other interests in restoring the dignity of the east side.
Right, because you know, I know the sisters are doing a lot over there, the Grassroots Coalition's doing a lot over there. Are you saying those could be some of the potential partners?
Oh, absolutely, yes. They in a sense,
which would make sense in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm president of Bike Erie. Margarita Dangle of the Sisters of St. Joseph Eastside is on my board. So we talk about what are we doing, how can we be more
they've already
effective.
got
That's
a lot
already
of
going.
very successful things on the ground that are making differences for people.
The key value of the Sisters of St. Joseph that I have witnessed is they get right into the community.
Absolutely.
And they dig into identifying that community's DNA.
Absolutely.
That is how you do this. City Hall's never done that, and they're not interested in doing it. It takes people like the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Well, good organization. Didn't mean to turn that into a plug for them, but
that's
I
okay.
was the first person to ever write about them.
They earned it.
I'm still writing about them. They're doing a nice job. So.
Anything
Any
else?
other questions?
No? Anything else
Anything
you guys
else
want
you
to
guys
add?
want to add that you want to make sure is out there?
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, the bridge was never falling down. Structurally, it's sound. PennDOT and every engineer that looked at it says it's repairable. What's missing is the will from City Hall to, instead of paying $2.5+ million to demolish it, they can pay $2.5+ million to repair it, restore it, and get it back in service for the next 100 years. And the maintenance will be taken care of by someone else. It's really just showing some dignity to the east side. That's what's missing here. John?
I think you just about said it all.
Well, I appreciate you guys for being here, and
thanks for having us.
I'm sure we'll talk again. It sounds like you got some other things in the works, whether it's related to the Third Circuit appeal of the viaduct or just plans on the east side, and we'll be in touch. So, thanks everybody for joining us.